morning, everyone. My name is Michelle Weise, and I am the Chief Innovation Officer at Strada Institute for the Future of Work. And we are an insights and development lab for Strada Education Network more broadly, which is a public charity that is investing in catalyzing more education to employment pathways. Strada Institute is dedicated to advancing our understanding of the future of learning and work so that we can begin to design the learning ecosystem of the future. We have too many working class Americans who are currently being left behind. And by working class, I mean the 32 million adults who have less than an associate degree and do not have a job or are not earning a living wage. These are people who are earning less than $25,000 a year individually or less than $50,000 for a family of four. They come from all races and ethnicities. They live in both rural and urban and suburban areas, and they have seen their futures undone by the forces of globalization, automation, and of course, the Great Recession. The disconnect between the supply of talent and the demand for opportunity is profound. 3/4 of the jobs lost during the Great Recession were held by those who had a high school degree or less. And through the post-recession recovery, it was the people with some training or education beyond high school who captured nearly all of the job growth. So those with less education were the first ones to get cut, and they were never hired back. And now, those with only a high school diploma are 50% more likely to live in poverty than those with some education or an associate's degree. And these differences matter greatly because educational and economic outcomes in America are grim for children who come from low-income families. Only 11% of Americans who come from working-class families earn a BA by the age of 24. And only 2 out of 25 kids who are born into low-income households actually make it to the top rung of the economic ladder. So even as economists point out that we are in the tightest labor market since the 1990s, we must remember that far too many Americans are disconnected from good work. Building a learning ecosystem with lots more on and off ramps that connect these 32 million adults in and out of learning and work and connecting them to good jobs and careers is the fundamental challenge that we face as a country as we prepare for the future of work. Policymakers and researchers have all kind of put forward a whole host of solutions around this problem, and they range from federal tax policy implications, higher education financing, unemployment or disability insurance programs. And these ideas are all certainly promising, but they also require a tremendous restructuring of a hugely entrenched political system and a huge shifting of political will toward transformative change. We need to move much more quickly. There is greater urgency because we can see now that the jobs of the future are going to demand even more education and training and a broader set of skills and competencies than the jobs of the past. In our latest report, we focus on a nascent market of innovative programs that serve as engines of upward mobility. They are designed for the 32 million, the people who need the most help in launching into promising, well-paying jobs and careers. We call these programs on-ramps and focus on 9 specific ones in this report. They are designed, tailored, and targeted for learners with significant barriers to educational and economic success. On-ramps boost skills, earnings, and employment outcomes for working-class adults and connect them faster and more directly to employers who are seeking new and diverse talent pipelines. And they target those T-shaped skills, those kind of broad human capacities, things and behaviors like grit, self-efficacy, career readiness skills, workforce competencies. But then they also target those vertical skills, those more technical skills in healthcare, cybersecurity, web development, and advanced manufacturing. On-ramps reduce both education and hiring frictions. These are targeted short burst training programs that reduce time to employment. They reduce the cost of participation and uncertainty around job outcomes compared to traditional education and training programs. And crucially, they all develop very strong employer partnerships and commitments to hire through apprenticeships, internships, and proactive job placement services. If these are starting to sound a little bit like last mile providers, like coding boot camps, they are similar in the ways in which they address both these education and hiring frictions, but they serve the most underserved populations. On-ramps wrap their services around people like Keisha, who had hit rock bottom when she had lost her job, her house, and her car in the span of just a few months. Sadly, Keisha's story is typical of many on-ramp participants. But just a few months after she started an on-ramp program through JBS, Keisha was actually employed at UC San Francisco, an organization to which she had applied multiple times before unsuccessfully. These programs are providing sorely needed experimentation to determine what works in launching, reskilling, and upskilling the 32 million working class Americans. Most importantly, they are delivering on their promises. These programs are effective. They boast job attainment rates as high as 91%, and completers of this program are seeing their salaries increase, whether they're doubling, tripling, or quadrupling their salaries. The report celebrates these major successes of these important programs and underscores their heartening results. At the same time, however, we take a very hard look at why they are not proliferating and why they are not scaling faster. On-ramps are relatively new. There are about approximately 65 available in the US to date, and they're serving approximately 100,000 adults nationwide. As they are currently designed, these are simply too small to serve the challenge ahead. We need new business models, new strategies, new technologies, new programs that integrate the insights of these on-ramps, that harvest those insights, and then experiment further. By zeroing in on the challenges of scaling on-ramps to good jobs, we really hope to spark a dialogue within the social impact investing space about how we might develop more robust, more creative solutions to empower more of the 32 million working class Americans who are at risk of being left behind by the future of work. Venture capital and social impact investors are overlooking this market opportunity. LearnLodge came out not too long ago with its understanding of the landscape of workforce tech. And within just the last 3 years, we've seen a $2.9 billion marketplace burgeon around workforce tech. We've seen 250 companies get funded in this same space. So VCs are investing billions of dollars in new programs, ventures, and companies and technologies with the promise to disrupt higher education. According to one analysis, though, companies directed at supporting higher income, white-collar, middle-skilled jobs have attracted more than 3 times the funding as those companies who are directing their solutions at low-skilled, low-income workers. So scaling on-ramps to better economic opportunities is the first step to building toward that more inclusive, equitable learning ecosystem of the future. Social impact investors can use their capital to shift the market towards these 32 million and take what's been learned and figure out how to engage and experiment further. It's precisely for these reasons that in this report we talk about the barriers to scale so that we can begin to think about new strategies for building an infrastructure for growth and to turn operators from niche innovators into large-scale operators. So what if on-ramps were strategic talent solutions for the future? These are incredibly robust talent pipelines. The problem is that businesses can often perceive these programs as goodwill and not necessarily good business. So employers that engage with on-ramps via their community and social relations practices or their corporate social responsibility programs are often satisfied with hiring just enough on-ramp completers to signal that goodwill. But this dynamic ultimately inhibits growth, and in order to achieve scale, employers have to perceive these on-ramps as incredible talent pipelines and seek buy-in across multiple business units from the CEO to the talent strategy officers down to the hiring managers. What if they were self-sustainable? Right now, these on-ramps are facing some challenging program economics. On-ramps that launch working class adults into good jobs are high-cost endeavors. They require a more intensive amount of services and wraparound navigational supports for people than other kinds of educational training programs. But poor program economics, as well as over-reliance on philanthropic sources and government sources, has made it impossible for on-ramps to understand actually which interventions cost what and which ones truly work. On-ramps can really start to think about sustainability and growth by adopting more modern activity-based costing methods. There's also a misconception in number 3, right? As we think about mitigating the risk in hiring practices, there's a misconception that on-ramps are high-risk investments. In fact, the exact opposite is true. The most innovative on-ramps are actually hiring program participants before employers do, and then leveraging outsourced apprenticeship models at Tectonic or IC Stars, where they give employers a low-stakes way of assessing the work of a potential employee before hiring them. So not only do they mitigate risk in the hiring process for employers, but they also create a really interesting revenue stream for the on-ramp. And finally, what if on-ramps could accelerate the growth of diversity and inclusion hiring and management practices? We need to help on-ramps build better business cases for themselves. And this is where the impact investing space can really make a dent in this problem. We have to measure, and then measure what matters, right? Limited evidence of program quality. There's limited evidence on program quality and return on investment. Learners really don't have good information on whether or not they should pursue an on-ramp. Employers do not see the obvious human capital management ROI of these programs. And on-ramp providers themselves struggle to make their case clear to all stakeholders, especially their funders. So on-ramps have to start selling themselves as robust talent pipelines by providing a sound business case that includes these measures of ROI as well as long-term career success. This also means that, and this is something that we know is true of all post-hire employee support, right? That in order for people to actually thrive in a new role, you have to give them some sort of support. It's a best practice. But this is especially true for adults with little employment experience. In the best cases, employers kind of take on these wraparound services that really exist for these learners. But if you think about how intensive some of those navigational and wraparound services are on the on-ramp program, and then when a completer actually makes it into a good job and those wraparound supports fall away, it can be devastating. So in the best case, employers actually take the baton from the on-ramp and provide that critical mentoring, that guidance, the feedback, and the training to help workers acclimate to that new environment. As daunting as these barriers to scale may seem, these opportunities ahead are as vast as the millions of adults whose lives stand to be changed if we succeed. Employers, impact investors, funders, policymakers, learning providers, and entrepreneurs can really take these seeds of innovation and apply them through further experimentation. And with a critical eye towards these obstacles and opportunities, together we can build on what works and multiply the impact to empower more of the 32 million working class adults who are at risk of being left behind by the future of work. Thank you.